Oh, hi. Didn't see you there. Welcome back to the Mayberry place, where everything is a little extraordinary. I'm your host, Susie Suzanne, but you can call me Karen. Today, we will be discussing scene design. Scene design affects the organization and appearance of the theatrical space. The scene design's main purpose are to demonstrate the world of the play, characterize the acting space, and set the tone for the play. But don't take my word for it. Let's see what my friends have to say.
Hey, thanks Beth. Hey, so today I'll be showing you the 4 different types of stages that theater uses. So the first stage we'll look at is the proscenium arch stage. This stage is the most commonly used, and it's probably the one you are most familiar with. It has the audience only facing one direction towards the stage. The stage itself is a little bit elevated. It also has a backdrop that the designer makes, and it also has a curtain that they usually put down whenever they need to make a scene change. This place also has a back stage, which allows them to place all their props and all that sort of stuff. The designers, when they're making this set, all they have to worry about is kind of more of like a two-dimensional view. They just have to worry about the back of the stage and making sure that it sets a good tone for the story. Our second stage on the list is called the thrust stage. The thrust stage is a stage that's a little elevated and actually bulges out more than the last stage we looked at. This kind of allows the audience to see the stage at 3 different angles. They sit on the left, right, and in front of the stage. This allows the performer-audience relationship to be a lot more better. The audience is a lot closer to the action. But since the stage is being watched at 3 different types of angles, the actors and designers have to be aware that they are being watched from 3 different angles. The scenery is usually in the back of the stage still. Usually they don't have a drop curtain. And whenever they have to wheel their props in and out, they usually just wheel them back to the back and stuff like that. So our third stage is called the arena stage, and I guess the best way to kind of describe what the stage is kind of like watching any sporting event in a stadium. The audience is pretty much all around. They get a good 360 view of the stage. The stage is not elevated. It's just kind of just an opening on the floor. Because it has more than three views, the actors and designers and directors must be aware that every angle of them is being watched by the audience. There are no curtains. When they do a scene change, they usually just dim the lights or don't dim them at all. That's always in full view of the audience. When actors go on and off stage, there's usually underground passages and doors that allows the actors to go underneath and then get back to where I guess you could call it the resting area or something like that. So the last stage we'll be talking about is called the flexible space stage. This is a pretty unique stage. The reason why is because the stage is always changing. The audience and the actors are always intermingling with each other. There's usually sometimes 2 performances going on at the same time. And the audiences are always changing. The actors are always popping up on new stages and stuff like that. The kind of the more purpose for this type of stage really is that it's usually meant to break in kind of new actors, try out new things. It's an experimental stage where if they don't have enough money and they just want to put on a show for somebody, that's usually what it's done for. They'll have someone either acting over here, where my Ninja Turtle Donatello's at, or they'll be down over there in the middle. He'll probably be performing something else down there. But they're going around at the same time pretty much. And that's about all the stages that we're covering. So Yeah, so we'll be going on to what my friends have to say next.
In addition to performance spaces, theaters often have other rooms known as auxiliary spaces. Some of these include, but are not limited to, a scene shop, property room or shop, costume storage, a light shop, lighting storage, control booths, rehearsal rooms, dressing rooms, green rooms, business offices, the lobby, restrooms, refreshment stands, and the box office. There are a lot of theaters, especially those used on Broadway, that don't include a full range of facilities for construction or costumes. This is because Broadway theaters host productions rather than serving as a permanent home. Regional and university theaters usually have a full range of facilities. Using the theatrical space. Normally when planning a production, the director assumes the audience space of the theater is fixed, and while they must take into account the auditorium size, shape, sightlines, acoustic properties, most directors tend to view these as unchanging, similar to this space. However, there are some theater spaces that are designed so their arrangement can be altered where a director can shape the audience space to suit the production. Jerzy Grotowski was known for making audiences a part of his production, creating a living theater, so to speak. But those views are far from the norm. Generally, directors try to predict the makeup of their audience, but ultimately, the director lets others attract as large of an audience as possible.
Each production has a specific design to help engage the audience through sounds and visuals. This not only includes the sound designer and scene, costume, and lighting designers, but also the actor and the director. There are 6 basic elements, which are line, shape, space, color, texture, and ornamentation. And there are 6 basic principles, which are harmony, balance, variety, proportion, rhythm, and emphasis to help the designers become more efficient. All of these play a unique part in bringing the whole play together, and it's also to help stimulate a specific response from the audience.
Once the scenery is all done and complete, as you can see here, you have to move it on or off the stage. Now there are many ways to do this, and I will be going through a few of the examples. The first is by manually moving it. This set piece here is actually one that was manually moved. It's set on wheels so that a few people could wheel it onto the stage and off once it was through.
Another way of being able to move scenery on or off the stage is by something called flying, which means that it is suspended somewhere above the stage. There is a disco ball right up there, which uses a pulley system, which is a counterweight for it, so that it can be flown on or off the stage. Another way of moving scenery on or off stage is by something called a wagon. A wagon is something that allows for heavier set pieces to be moved on or off stage. Here we have what is left of what was used as a wagon. Unfortunately, the actual contraption is deconstructed at the time, but you can see there what remains of the track system that was used for the wagon. In some stages, there is a permanent system so that they don't have to do something like this. Another way to move scenery on or off stage is by using something called an elevator system. Now, it's exactly as it sounds. It uses a mechanism that is underneath part of the stage to either raise or lower it so that people can then move pieces of scenery on or off and then raise it back up. The final way to shift scenery is by using something called a revolving stage or a turntable. As you can see here, this part of the revolving stage has trees for the scenery. But as we keep moving over to the other side, we can see there's a completely different set over here. Now this turntable was manually moved with wheels and people pushing it. However, most turntables are turned mechanically. theater, it's very seldom to see one way of moving scenery. Instead, you often see a lot of different ways to move the scenery, but it is up to the director on how they wish to change the scenery. Next, we have set props and hand props. Set props are part of the set, but they are props, like this right here. This was used in a show called Starlight Express, which had the actors on roller skates throughout the entire show. This was actually part of a ramp, which was set on stage that the actors would use to roller skate on. As for hand props, like this bucket here, they are used by the actors on stage during a scene. However, whether you are using set or hand props, it is always up to the director's discretion on how they look.
Sceneries for plays can range from detailed set pieces to a simple door in the center of the stage. Designers have a few basic scenic units: soft, framed, and three-dimensional. They can be combined or used on their own. It is up to the designer to use their knowledge to know what is best for the production. The basics of soft scenery are drops, draperies, scrim, and cycloramas. Drops are cloths dropped from the fly to enclose settings in the back and provide a visual surface for the actors and viewers. Draperies are hung parallel on either side of the stage in order to mask the sides of the stage to act as wings. They can also be used to surround the acting area and may even have a city or nature scene painted on them. Scrim is a specialized curtain that is opaque from the front, but when lighted from the back becomes transparent. It can be used to show another scene behind the first one, used for ghosts to disappear and reappear, or even as a way to illustrate a scene in a fog or a hazy memory. Cyclorama is a neutral, undecorated surface that surrounds the stage area on three sides. It is stretched in a U shape to represent the sky. The color can be changed with lights or even have images projected on it. Next is frame units. Some units are framed to be self-supporting and are smaller than the soft scenery. The basic frame units are flats, doors and windows, and screen. A flat is a wooden or metal frame covered by a thin sheet of wood or fabric. The three types of flat are with no opening to represent walls, and with an opening to allow for a door, and flats specifically cut or pieced together to stimulate a specific silhouette. Doors and windows are often used with flats, but because it is used by actors and moved, has to be weighted and framed on its own to not be affected by the movement. Screens are commonly used to project still or moving pictures. They can be by themselves or have multiple screens. They come in a variety of shapes and can be moved during a performance if desired. Soft scenery and frame units are considered two-dimensional. The three-dimensional units are steps, ramps, platforms, trees and rocks, columns, and fragmentary architecture. Scenery can be made up of many different materials depending on the look you are going for. The most common materials are wood, cloth, steel, aluminum, fiberglass, and styrofoam. These materials can be combined and formed to create scenery, objects, and even props. Scenery is assembled in a scene shop, or in some instances, it can be assembled in the performance space. The scenery is a combination of flats, doors, steps, platforms, etc., put together to create a larger scenery. You can either fix them together or keep them separate depending on what is needed for the production. If the units need to be moved between scenes, the parts will have temporary joining methods to allow for the shift between scenes. After the scenery has been assembled, the final touch is painting. There is a variety of painting techniques, including the following: lining, blending, and stencil. Lining is used on flat surfaces to create dimension by replicating shadows and highlights. Blending lends the appearance of texture by applying 3 or more tones. Wet blending or dry blending can be used. The most common blending techniques are spattering, sponging, scumbling, and dry brushing. Spattering involves flicking drops of paint from a brush onto a base coat. Starting with a lighter color, then using a darker color, creates the illusion of raised and receding surfaces. Sponging involves taking a natural sponge and dipping it in paint and patting it onto the surface. Scumbling involves simultaneously applying and blending more than one shade at a time and give a mottled effect. Dry brushing is taking a dry brush and lightly dipping it in paint and lightly brush on the surface. This technique allows for the color beneath to be somewhat visible. This creates shading, streaking, and general texture. Stenciling is often used to create a repetitive pattern. You start by cutting the desired design out of plastic or paper, set it against the surface, and paint over it. Design is left painted on the surface. The painting techniques can be applied together or on their own, depending on the desired look the scene designer is wanting to accomplish.
When designers are approached by a new design, they always tend to make some sort of sketch. Most of the time, designers use the design elements, which are lines, shapes, texture, color, orientation, and space. Designers have the pressure of not only creating the setting, but creating the lighting, the costumes. So basically, they're in charge of the whole presentation. On Broadway, designers may have to provide drawings such as rear elevations, which are drawings made from the back, front elevations, which are drawings made from the front view, side elevations, which are drawings from the side view, profile view, and also complex views and painter elevations, which describes the painting and the design of the set. Designers also have to worry about where everything is going to be stored when it is not in use on stage. After plans are approved and construction begins, designers have to oversee to make sure things are being done and drawn and completed to scale. After the setting process is complete, in order to make a total production, some rehearsals have to be ran as tech rehearsals. This means that the tech crew is running their checks on sounds and different elements in the show. You also have to run some dress rehearsals. Dress rehearsals means that you are running just like there is an audience in the crowd watching your final performance. You have your costumes, tech crew is running their lighting, their sound, and anything else that they are in charge of, as the director is in the audience watching the whole thing. Usually during dress rehearsals, there are no start and stops like there are in a regular rehearsal or a tech rehearsal. After dress rehearsals usually comes the final production. That is when audiences are in the house and you are putting on the production that you have been working on for the past couple of months.
Wasn't that amazing? Scene designers do a whole lot to make a whole world in a small space. They aren't the only ones to help create these worlds. Designers have assistants and other volunteers who work together on set designs. We don't typically credit them for the work that they do, but the set and scenery would not be created without them. Before you go, I want you to think about all of the elements that affect the scene designer's final design and what outside forces or ideas influences the sets being used during the performance. The more questions you ask, the more aware you become of the world around you, on and off stage. Sorry we ran out of time. Thanks for coming to the Mayberry Place, where everyone is a little extraordinary.